This is the Wade Borth Podcast, where smart ideas spark new opportunities. If you're ready to see money in a whole new way and build a life on your terms, you're in the right place.
Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, we're gonna have some fun. My assistant Beth is going to be talking or asking questions maybe that a lot of clients have in their mind. They hear the podcast, they hear the conversation on the street, they hear other TikTok, the other noise on the internet, and say, what's the catch? Or what are some questions that are out there that a lot of people are thinking but maybe not asking? And so today I thought we would go into a couple of different videos and ideas, not videos, but just ideas and conversations around, let's just ask some questions. What are the questions that are being thought of but maybe not asked? And so, Beth, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation. And I know this is new for you, right? So we've done this series like this before with my previous assistant, and Beth is new and she's new to this. So everybody appreciate the fact that she's stepping outside her comfort zone. So I appreciate that of you so much. And that's really what we ask of a lot of people is like, just step back and think of how I can grow. And your growth usually is hiding behind what kind of scares you a little bit. So thank you for joining me. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Well, I'm scared.
A little nervous. No, not scared. A little nervous, right? So,
Yeah.
Well, but it's really helpful. I love new perspectives. I love being able to, put things in context and bring some perspective to things because I've been doing this for so long. Sometimes I kind of forget that there's questions out there or thoughts out there that people have that I probably still have at one time, but they're so far buried down so deep that I just don't think about it. So I love new perspective. I love when people ask me a quote unquote tough question, because I don't really believe there's a tough question. I just think sometimes there might be answers that we're not prepared to give. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing your perspective. A lot of different stuff we've talked about. You've been helping me a lot with organizing some podcasts and my blog content on our website, sagewellstrategy.com. And then from all that, you've developed some thoughts and some questions that you're hearing. And also, I know you listen to other things on the internet, TikTok and different stuff. And like, why are those people saying that? And, how come we approach it differently? Or why are you saying this? And so I love those. And that's why I think this is going to be a good little series for us. So I'm looking forward to our conversation here. So let's start off with, what would you like to know? Let me just ask you, what would you like to know that I can maybe help bring some clarity to?
Awesome. So one of the big things that just looking at comments on your podcast or on social media and that kind of stuff, I see a lot of people commenting that it's a scam. It's too good to be true.
Yeah.
And just kind of wanting to know first, like why you think people think that it's a scam.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. We hear a lot of that. And so then I really try to ask, what is a scam? What do you say is a scam? And I try to find some clarity from the person that's saying that because I'm not sure what they're hearing or I'm not sure how they're interpreting what's being said. So let me just take a step back and say, there is no magic in this business. There's just a lot of magicians. So let me pull back the curtain a little bit, right? So let's go back to Wizard of Oz. Let's pull back the curtain a little bit and say what's really going on. I think a lot of things being said are being said in order to confuse people to say, hey, we have a magical device here, but we're not going to tell you which the magical device is. And I think that's because they want to take control or have you pass control of your finances and really the result of your life over to them, over to the agent. Where here, my value that I bring to you and bring to the listener and really bring to anybody that's here is to empower you to understand what's going on so then you can be your own best advocate versus giving that ability away to somebody else, a money manager or Ken Fisher, somebody, the industry that's out there that wants to, garner your money. So they want to put up there, oh, that's a scam. Well, okay, what's a scam? Tell me what's a scam. And I'm really curious what people would say. But from a bigger perspective and just a lot of conversation I've had, the scam part, I think, comes from the idea that, oh, this is magical. And I would say it's quite the opposite of that. What it takes to have, like, you take control of your finances is, it takes some intentionality on your end. You have to have an understanding of where your money flows and how it flows and where it's sitting and where it's residing and how it's serving you. And that takes a little bit of work. Quite frankly, that takes a lot of work. And so I would push back a little bit. It also takes attention to, what is the asset that it's sitting in, and is that asset serving you? And so we talk about whole life being the toughest asset that's out there, in the sense that if you're storing your dollars, your safe, secure dollars, not your investment dollars, because life insurance is not an investment. So let's get the terminology right. But if we're holding dollars in the right environment, is it serving you well? And so that's really the key, the second part of that. And then it's like, then at that time we can say, hey, can we use this to now start financing vehicles, or start financing my business, or start financing my son's education, or my college education, whatever it might be. And we have a plan and we have a process in place to help facilitate that. So really it takes time, money, and discipline. And so a scam really should be the easiest thing in the world. It shouldn't take anything in order to make that happen. So I think the idea of the scam is everybody's looking for the easy button. And when they see the easy button, they go, that must be the scam. Well, I'm going to tell you that there's no easy button here. It's a change of the way we think, kind of the change of like, who do we want to give control of our money? And it's a change of like, how do I act differently because I don't want the results everybody else is getting? And so again, if you're looking for a scam, and I've used this comment before, it's like the easiest way to make money in this business is to sell, if you want to make money in this business, you lie to people that want to be lied to, or you provide the truth to those that are seeking the truth. The way you go broke is by trying to deliver the truth to those that want to be lied to. So I don't, those that don't want to hear our message, don't want to like open up to the idea, I'm okay with that. They're welcome to go hear what's being advertised on TV, because anytime money moves, somebody gets paid. Let's just be honest about that. And so if somebody's telling you, hey, that's a scam, but put your money here because we're going to take care of you, really? Also, now my antenna would go up and say, is that really what's going on there? Why are you willing to do something for free when nobody else is willing to do it for free? Because quite frankly, if you're willing to do it for free, what value do you bring? All money is just an exchange of value. It's either time or it's expertise or that type of thing. So yeah, the whole idea of a scam, I would question, what are they asking? What are they saying is a scam? Because I don't know what they're hearing. I don't know what they're absorbing, because sometimes that idea, it's pretty broad. And so I don't fight those, the battles on such a broad basis, because I don't know where they're coming from. So I'd really like to understand what they're seeing, what they understand about what we're talking about. I love to educate people. Quite frankly, that's the fun part about this, is like my job is to help educate people, have an understanding. That's why you listen to the Wade Borth Podcast. That's why you listen to other podcasts. Let's get educated. Let's have some discernment. Let's own your own life and understand, like, hey, how does this serve me? And once you're educated, then you can make an informed decision. And that's really how I see what we do, is like, let's educate you. Again, I'm open to, to pushback, but I'm also open. If you're going to challenge me with like, hey, this is expensive, I'm going to say, well, compared to what? Isn't it fair if you're going to come back and say this is expensive or this is a scam? I'm going to say compared to what? And it should be reasonable that you should say, well, compared to this, because this is all the details I know about X, whatever this is. Because I don't like to get in the comparison game, because my value is to bring clarity, to bring perspective, and to really bring a guided tour, again, by empowering you into your financial life. I don't know if that makes sense, or is that helpful?
I think it is. So when people are talking scams, do you see most often that it's because they're like, oh, it's an insurance product, and there's such a stigma around insurance in general, whether it's whole life, auto insurance, like homeowners insurance, like any of it? Is it just because it's an insurance product that's being used as a tool that when people don't understand it, they're like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's insurance, and the insurance companies are just out to make money, and they're not seeing how they own it and they can use it for different things?
Boy, there's probably a lot of truth there. I think a lot of reason why people look at insurance, part of this is people will lump insurance all into one basket.
Yep.
And I don't know that's fair, right? There's a difference between property and casualty insurance, which pays, claims all the time. There's disability insurance, there's health insurance, which again takes a bad rap, mostly because there's government involvement in it, and more government involvement, usually the crazier and stupider it gets. And life insurance, and particularly whole life insurance, right? So whole life insurance, to me, is the pinnacle of the best type of insurance. It's typically done by a mutual carrier, which means it's ran for the benefit of its policyholders. There's no incentive for a mutual insurance company to quote unquote scam its policyholders, because if it makes extra profit through scamming, where does that extra profit go? It doesn't have shareholders, it doesn't have Wall Street to report to. It goes back to the policyholders in the form of dividends. So life insurance is, again, it's a tool, but I think a lot of where people have, I don't want to call it a scam, but whatever, let's call it that. It's like, because they don't understand how that works. They love the results of what insurance does for them, but they don't necessarily want to pay the premiums for it. So let me just use an example. We had insurance at our lake place, and we had a big storm come through, and we had a ton of damage, and we paid very little premiums because we just bought the place like 8 months prior to the storm, so we paid very little in premiums. And the storm came through, and they paid out well over $100,000 in a claim to us. So for that claim, I paid virtual pennies for that, but it covered when I needed it. Now, I'll continue to pay premiums the next 30 years, and I may never have another claim, but I'll continue to pay premiums. And so insurance companies are there to help protect you from those big events, big catastrophic events that are going to happen. Now, with life insurance, the big catastrophic event is death, right? And so you're going to pay the premiums, and it's perfectly priced for where you're at, typically. And so it's all about transferring your risk. And I think there's this, the reason why people look at it as a scam is because they don't fully understand how life insurance works. And again, they're regulated by the states. So that's the other side of it. It's like, it's not like they're out there in the Wild West. They're regulated by the states. And so the states will say, again, from a life insurance perspective, I don't want to talk about property and casualty, but each life insurance company has to have their rates and their policies all approved by the state. So there's a state, each state says, hey, we have a crack at this, we don't like this, we like this. So the state's looking out for the client as well. But with whole life, people look at it and say, oh, it's expensive, but they don't understand what it is they're buying. And then my idea there is you're buying a death benefit for pennies on the dollar. What I mean by that is there's no way that you're ever going to put in more money in a whole life policy. You're going to put more money in than you're ever going to get out. It's not going to happen. So go ahead.
Can you explain that more, like what you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is when you look at premiums and the premiums you're paying, if you add up all the premiums anybody's ever going to pay throughout their lifetime, and the day they die, and you take a total and say, Margaret paid, $300,000 in premiums over her lifetime, I know for sure there's going to be more than $300,000 of death benefit coming back to her. Just know for sure there has to be. Actuarially, that's what has to happen. That is why life insurance is designed. So you're always going to get the death benefit for pennies for the dollar that you're getting out in death benefit. It might be 30 cents on the dollar, it might be 80 cents on the dollar, but you're always going to get you're always going to be paying a discounted dollar for the dollar that you're going to receive in death benefit.
That goes
actually, it has to happen that way. It's priced that way. And the state insurance commissioners all agree that's what's going to happen.
So that's talking about the death benefit. Do you see a lot of confusion when you're talking whole life and using IBC for like the cash value and the portion of that? Like when someone comes and talks to you and they might be saying this is a scam or it's too good to be true, a lot of it revolves around that part of you can use this to fund things. Yeah. Do you kind of want to walk through like what someone might not understand that portion of it?
Yeah, I would definitely say that we have to understand what it is, and we have to understand why we're using it. Again, that's why I would say life insurance is not an investment. Really, all a life insurance contract is, at its core, is a professionally managed bond and real estate portfolio that's done at this hugest institutional level, and it's done for the benefit of the policyholders, guaranteed never to go backwards. So all the risk is taken off and put on the insurance company to manage it for our benefit. And they get to use their size to buy bond positions, real estate positions that we wouldn't, as individuals, normally be able to do. So let's understand that. At the very basis, that's what it says. Then the idea of like, oh, can I use my cash value? You absolutely can use your cash value. The first policy loan, just to put it in context, 1848. So the first whole life policy that used a policy loan was back in 1848. I was saying, I did a presentation a while back, and I was saying 1948. I'm like, no, 1848. So think about that. Almost 200 years ago was the first policy loan. And in the early 70s, Equitable of Iowa, the president wrote a paper, and he was talking about, what were people using loans for? And it was like for businesses, for policies, or for policy or premium payments, just the whole bevy of the gambit of everything that was being used for the policy loan. The policy loans were being used for. So this idea that, it's too good to be true, or why have I never heard about this before? It's because it's never talked about in most circles. Banks and institutions use this all the time, but it doesn't benefit them to talk about it. That's why. So all we're doing is bringing some light to the long-standing use of policy loans, because the idea is that we need, when do we need cash the most? Typically at the time of death. That's the big event where we need liquidity and cash. When's the second most important time that we need cash? Every day before that. Right? So access to the cash is important. All we're talking about with the idea of IBC is like setting up a structure, setting up a process for you to take control of the financing function in your life. So instead of borrowing money from Wells Fargo, paying their rates and their terms, you borrow it from your own family banking system. But you need a pool of money, you need a pool of capital before that happens. And so this idea of like, it's too good to be true. Well, it's not, because it takes three things. It takes time, money, and discipline to make it happen. If you're not willing to say, hey, I'm in this for the long haul, I see this, I'm going to make this a way of life, or, I see a 10, 15, 20-year runway for this, probably, the idea of whole life insurance is probably not to your benefit. Because if you're going to think short term, just go put the money in a CD or put it in a high yield savings account and you'll be fine. But this is the path, a path to freedom sometimes isn't always the easiest. And that's where this comes into play. Quite frankly, I always say that this is probably the opposite of get rich quick. It's get rich long term. Because you have to have a system, you have to have a process, and you have to have the discipline to say, hey, if I'm going to borrow money out, I'm going to act like Wells Fargo. I'm going to take my pool of money, I'm going to put it to work. Maybe I'll lend money to you so you can go buy a piece of real estate or do an investment. I better charge you some interest, and interest more than what it cost me to get access to those dollars. But my money continues to grow and compound inside my policy if I use it or if I don't use it.
Do you think that people think it's too good to be true because it takes work?
Yeah, I think, like I said, everybody's probably looking for an easy button. Not everybody. A lot of people say, hey, what's the easy button? And most things in life, if it's really easy, probably doesn't work. And so they get upset. It's because somebody was always willing to sell them, hey, this is going to be easy. This is going to, you're going to make money by, buying a watch for your kids is going to make you money. But flies in the face of reason, how does that really work? And they go, it's too good to be true. Maybe that part of it is. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because there's some people, some fringes that are talking the kind of the silly conversations out there kind of to catch you because it's marketing. Just take a step back and say, who's got a reasonable process? Who's got a reasonable conversation? And do I want to work with a person that has an understanding of, of putting me in a position of understanding where my flow of money goes, what a proper financial picture looks like, and do I have enough reserves so I can protect my family and take advantage of opportunities? And then when I do have the opportunity to go and use my money to generate other money, right? So that's the ultimate goal, is we can take cash and have our cash working for us instead of us working for cash, but then having it come back and with a return. And if you don't have a process for that, or if that person that you're talking to doesn't have their own system or their own policies, then I would say, hey, maybe you need to question, do you want to work with those people?
Have you ever had somebody come to you who was really skeptical, and when you walk them through all of this, they had kind of like that aha moment?
Oh, yeah, 100 times. And again, I look at skepticism is more of, I'm curious. So let's make sure we have an understanding of what that means, right? I have people on the spectrum that are coming to me as they basically want to battle you because you're wrong, they're right. Again, I want to work with people that have an open mind. If somebody comes to me with an open mind, says, I'm skeptical of this because I don't understand, but I want to learn what you have to say so I can make an informed decision. I love having that conversation because it's an open dialogue, right? It's like, let's find common ground and let's grow, because we both grow from that conversation. I've had people come to me and say, what you're doing is, a scam. And I'm like, okay, tell me what you know. And they really don't know anything. They're just repeating what they think they should be saying. And if they're not open to learning, then why are we having a conversation? And we've parted ways. My whole intent in every conversation is to have a 100% positive outcome. What does a 100% positive outcome look like? It looks like I get educated, you get educated. If we find common ground and I can be of value to you, my value is the clarity and, bring some clarity to what you're talking about, what you want to do, and bring you some direction, and bring you some focus and help you and empower you to take control of that, then great, then that's even better. But somebody that's coming to me wanting to prove me wrong versus let's have an understanding of let's try to learn and grow from it. That's the type of person I probably won't work with.
So what's the biggest thing you would say to people when they're feeding into the hype? Whether it's where to get educated on it, who to talk to, or even just getting them to open their mind. Like, how do you navigate people coming to you other than just saying, listen to the podcast,
Yeah.
educate yourself? Like,
I would have them ask one question. How does this serve me? And that would be the first question, and probably a couple of questions. How does this serve me? Because again, at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. And is the person across the table or across the Zoom on the call, are they listening to me? Are they engaging me? Are they bringing me knowledge and understanding? Are they allowing me and helping me to grow, which is empowerment? Or are they saying, do this, and then they never really heard what I had to say, and they're taking control of my finances? So what's the difference if you give your money to Charles Schwab and have them manage it, or you go to another agent that's selling a policy and say, just give me your money and, let me, I don't want to educate you. I just want to take your money and manage it for you. What's the difference versus somebody that hears you, empowers you, which means that you're the one now that's taking control? It's like, where does the control lie? So I would say, that's probably the biggest difference when people are coming, and if they have one particular question, it's like, how does it serve you, what you're trying to accomplish? And how clear can I deliver that conversation back to you? We have a ton. When I say a ton, I mean a ton of resources to educate people. But education without the ability to accept education doesn't do anybody any good. Or the willingness to take the time. I mean, think about the time. It does take some time, because we're talking about the thing that will free you. And, if you want to talk about retirement or throughout your life, people will spend very little time financially educating themselves. They'll probably spend less time doing that than they do planning a vacation. But it's the one thing. You've traded your most valuable asset, which is your time on this earth, for money. And that money deserves your time and attention, just like the time on the earth deserves the time and attention. And if you're willing to do that, then you're probably somebody we can work with.
that is pretty neat because, I mean, it's a concept that's been around, like you said, since the 1800s.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's just becoming, I don't want to say popular, but I feel like people are starting to pay attention to it more now. But with that awareness comes a lot of the
magician.
This is too good to be true. This is.
There's a lot of noise out there. There's just no getting around the fact there's a lot of noise out there. And again, I actually embrace that. It brings a lot of attention, but understand that with that attention, comes like, I need to educate myself a little bit more. What are they doing to educate me and empower me versus just sell my product? So, but the point, it's been around a very long time, but the ability to disseminate information in today's age is crazy compared to what it was even 10 years ago. To get a message out 10 years ago, it took a long time. It took print. It took, a recording studio. I mean, here you and I are just like hopping on to our podcast and talking about this idea, and we're going to throw it out there, and there's going to be, hundreds of people listening to this, or thousands of people listening to this. No, by the way, subscribe to this podcast, like it, follow it. I'd love for you to hear more about this. But the ability to get the information out is phenomenal, and it's flooding the airways. Now, the problem with that is, the old adage is that, a lie will make its, way around the earth before the truth gets its shoes on, right? So the problem is, like, somebody throws out there a comment or says something that's a little bit outrageous, and everybody takes that as the gospel, and they take that as the truth, then we should question it. I said, there's nothing that's too good to be true. Think about that from an electricity standpoint or indoor plumbing. I mean, all these things at one time were too good to be true. All it should mean is like, it needs further investigation. That's how we should see stuff, not it's too good to be true.
That is interesting. How long has banking been around? Like Wells Fargo or like Bell Bank, any of those?
Well, banking has been around for, 3,000 to 4,000 years, right? Think about in the ancient times in the Bible, right? They were talking about money changing, and it's all banking is the process of changing money from one person's hands to another, right? So, and they just commercialized the banking process, a couple hundred years ago, 300-400 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever it's been, from a regulatory standpoint. So if we think about it, really, I guess I don't have the exact dates on it, but banking itself has been around for thousands of years. And all that, what I mean by banking is you have money to set aside with me, or you need money, I have access to dollars. Let me give you access to those dollars for a fee, for a price. And if you're going to use it to grow money, I would encourage people to read The Richest Man in Babylon, because there kind of describes that idea, the book called The Richest Man in Babylon. And really what it was is like people had gold. And so gold is the original starter in banking. It's like, I have gold, but I'm going to travel or I'm going to be gone. I need to store it somewhere. So they would store it with you, somebody that was credible and had a good reputation. And so they stored it with somebody, and that person goes, hey, I have money. It's sitting here with me. I can lend it out. Well, Wade's away doing whatever he's doing out on his mission or out on his crusade or whatever he's doing. When he comes back, I'll give him that gold. But in the meantime, I'm going to lend that money out to somebody else. And that's really kind of the idea how it started. So the idea of banking is just exchanging of dollars for value. And that's really what we're doing. Now, we start with ourselves. We start with our own family. But we will quickly grow past our own family and start lending to others. But what we do is we can use ourselves and our families as the proving grounds or the way to test what we're going to do. So do we drop a note, and are we serious about the loan repayments? How do we treat that money? Those are all things you should be doing. And so when I let money out to outside the family, it's the same process. And so we have to love ourselves more than we love Wells Fargo. Really just has to be that way. So if Wells Fargo is charging 10% for an auto loan or a consumer loan, and I'm going to lend my brother-in-law, $50,000 for the same consumer loan, I should at least charge what Wells Fargo is going to charge him. The question of how long has it been around has been around as long as money and time has been around. But the traditional banking, if you read the book, again, if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, read the book Creatures from Jekyll Island. Again, it's a book called Creatures from Jekyll Island, and that was the start of our centralized banking system as we know it today. And I believe it was 1913 that really came into play, where a group of wealthy bankers got together, colluded to create a central bank, which we know is the Federal Reserve today. So that's the modern day banking system. But yeah, if you want to get angry and you want to get upset at the current banking system, read that book, because it's a very interesting read.
I could definitely go down a rabbit hole on interest rates and that kind of stuff, but that might be a conversation for another day.
Yes.
But the comparison between how long both have existed, but just, you could probably ask like one of my nieces or nephews about a bank and they're going to know what it is. But you ask them about Whole Life or IBC and they're going to be like, I don't know what that is. But it's one of those things where it's just what people know and people are comfortable with what they know. So the education part that you're doing, I think, is really neat, because the more people know, the more they can do for themselves, ideally.
I love a fresh perspective. I love, if you got a topic, you got a question for Beth to ask me, I would love for you to throw it in the comment section. We'd love to hear what your questions are. We'd love to be able to have that conversation around what those questions might be. So put it in the comment section. We'd love to be able to have Beth, beat me up as much as she possibly can. So
happy to do so.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
I appreciate you spending some time with me. Change starts with understanding, and action builds the future. We'll catch you on the next episode.